roughly 2% of women-owned businesses ever get to $1 million in revenue, and 33% of male-owned businesses do. Talk through that a little bit.
Part of the problem is that women are not thinking big enough, and that we've potentially been, conditioned or stuck with thinking about building small businesses. And I meet women all the time who say, my big goal is to do $1 million in revenue. And I say, yes, that's a fantastic goal, but let's think about how we could do that in like 18 months, 2 years. And let's think about what getting to 10 million looks like, and maybe 50 million, and maybe 100 million. And could your business be that big? And for very many women, the issue is just that we haven't thought about it. We haven't thought that we could, haven't had a lot of role models. But the flip side, of course, of that is that it takes money to make money. So, we are thinking big enough, but we've not had the capital to be able to grow and scale businesses to be able to make them bigger. So women are a whole lot less likely to not only get venture funding, but also to get the loans they need, the capital they need, even in the form of a loan to grow their business. So there's a whole lot of chicken and egg scenarios in the mix there, and who knows which comes first. But I think, my big message for women is we can and we should think about building big businesses. And it's important that we think about building big businesses, not just for our own value creation's sake, but I genuinely believe that when a diverse group of people, both sexes at the table, build our world, we'll build a better world. Women see different problems, think about solving different problems. And when we're both at the table, I think the world is a better, more balanced place.
Yeah. Sarah, what was that evolution in the sort of the belief of what's possible for you? It's like, for example, I've started 8 companies from scratch. And I can remember one that turned into a really nice, well into 9-figure exit. When I started, I could see $1 million. And then as halfway there, I could see 5 million. As we got about halfway there, I could see 25, and it just kept going. And by the time I sold it, I could see $1 billion. But I had limiting beliefs in the beginning. It's like, I knew it's possible. People do it. It wasn't something it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go do this. What was it like for you, your evolution?
It was very similar to that, actually. I remember we spent about 3 years. I built a business in the US called Under Canvas. Under Canvas is still the largest glamping company in the US. And I built a company that took me 3 years to figure out our sweet spot effectively. And for 3 years, we had various different business models, and one of them started to work. But I remember thinking, this is not very easy to grow this business. And eventually that business was able to do $1 million of revenue. But I remember thinking, this is very hard to control the revenue. It's very hard to drive sales. It's very hard to think about how we grow this business, which kind of created an impetus for continuing to think about, is there another version of this business? Is there a different version that whilst we maybe don't get rid of this business, that there's something else still in this space, which pushed us on to our eventual business model that became Under Canvas. And Under Canvas has tinted hotels outside of national parks across America. And that business, I also did not think, this will be $100 million business one day. I certainly wasn't thinking like that. But I did know at the beginning when that business originally launched, I knew we were onto something. And I, like you, could see $1 million, and then I could see, well, if we could do $1 million, we could do 5 million. and this sense of, I think I'm onto something. I think this is a thing. I think I can see a possible pathway for growing and scaling this business.
Yeah. And for our listeners, I highly recommend that you read Sarah's book, Thinking Bigger. She weaves the story of Under Canvas and so much more throughout the book. I found myself wanting more of the story of Under Canvas because it was so cool. The Yosemite experience where the weather comes in and flattens all the tents. I love to camp and hike and all of that, and those are exciting adventures. So I wasn't surprised that you didn't get a lot of complaints around that. Like they just worked with you along those lines. Um,
Yeah,
and
people are,
and
I guess we're very kind in our early days.
and more than that, the practical wisdom in the book, I rarely hear it so straightforward like that. And then just the tools and resources that you point to. So it's definitely a worthwhile read. And so you've got the business model changing. How often does that have to happen? Because I think for a lot of startup founders, there's a whole bunch of resiliency built into this, and you have to keep running at it and solving the problem. So maybe talk about the concept of solving the problem and then iterations to get to a business model that turned into that amazing exit for you.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is very painful, and it looks really easy, doesn't it? When you see someone who's been wildly successful and they've built a great big business, and you just think, "Wow, well, that's amazing. That could never happen to me." And the backstory, of course, for almost every business is that every business has basically been solving problem after problem after problem after problem. And I tell entrepreneurs all the time these days to be a successful entrepreneur, you really have to love solving problems. You have to love the problem that your business is trying to solve. And you have to love the whole idea of being in the trenches, trying to fix things constantly, trying to solve a problem. And I think that that is what trips a lot of us up in the early days. It's what gets us stuck. But for those who can overcome, and for those that can see a problem and think, this is just my next stepping stone to moving forward, that's where the opportunity lies. And that's a bit of a mind shift, I think, for many people.
Yeah, in the book, you had mentioned that a number of founders don't really understand the problem that they're solving for. How could
Yeah,
that happen
I
in your
know
view?
that's a crazy line, isn't it? It's like, how can you not understand your problem? But I think that largely happens because when we build businesses, we're often coming at it from um, trying to earn a living, trying to take something that we've got, trying to make money from it, trying to make something work in our lives. And often founders, unless maybe you've gone to business school and you learned the rule book from from the experts, most of us are taking a talent that we have, a resource that we have, some knowledge that we have, some expertise that we've got, and we're trying to turn it into some kind of a business. Without necessarily looking at it from the customer's point of view and saying, what is the problem the customer has that I am trying to solve for? Because when we solve problems for customers, customers usually want our solutions. As long as we've got a good solution and clear way that we are creating a solution to a very real problem. And I think that's the essence of a business that works. There's a very real problem that is real for many people, and ideally lots of people, and that you are creating something that people want and need, and that you have a solution then that everybody needs and wants, and that creates momentum. Um, so getting really clear on actually what is the heart of the problem, I think is a really brilliant exercise. A really good starting exercise for building a foundation, for building a company that actually has the potential to go somewhere and be something and create something that actually is impactful.
Is it ever too late to get in the game for you? It's not. What's the advice for the listeners to, you can start at 80 if you want to. Like most I talk to say I missed the boat.
That's a common thing. Yeah. I'm a prime example. Like I said, I met the founders at 46 years old. If I had taken if I had a resume and I just went and applied for a job there, they would never even talk to me. But it's never too late. And I tell people now, this is the greatest time in the world to start. I call it a side hustle. Keep your day job. But what are you doing when you get off at 5 o'clock? I mean, my daughter's a nurse, and I said, you got to start doing this. Do like this home care service where you do like the IV treatments or whatever. My son's a contractor. I said, I'll help you. There are 3 million small businesses for sale in America. And a lot of people don't even know about it. There's websites you can find them where people our age, boomers, are getting out of business. And some of them are just closing their doors because they don't have anyone to sell it to or pass. I said, there's so many opportunities. So even if you have a day job, hey, you've always wanted to, I mean, to me, like, it's crazy, like dry cleaners or laundromats, or there's certain businesses that are just cash flow. That doesn't mean you can't have a side hustle. It doesn't mean you can't invest with a group of friends. There's so many opportunities, and it's never too late. I think, there's so many ways to get funding. And if you have a dream and passion, why not? I mean, I think there's nothing worse to be on the end of our journey and be like, wow, I wish I had did that. Or I wish take a chance. It's surely never too late though. I mean, Colonel Sanders is probably the best example, I think, out of all the names I think of that were up there in years. I don't know if it's almost too good to be true when I tell people the story. Oh, you got lucky. Oh, that was a fluke. And I go, no, it really wasn't. You could recreate this. You could follow the same path I did, become an entrepreneur, go above and beyond. Don't look at your job as just 9 to 5. And oh my God, it's 4:59. I got to get out of here. I try and open people's minds to say, listen, look what I accomplished. And honestly, I use the analogy. You've seen these charts where it shows, Colonel Sanders started at this age, and these, people started their businesses in their well into their 40s. I said, I tell people I didn't meet the founders of Quest till I was 46 years old. Most people's trajectory is already set. And so that was just a whole new opportunity. I just try and change people's mindsets that they're like, oh, well, you lucked out. It was timing. Sure, there's a certain amount of everything, but also the energy I brought, the frequency I was running at. I didn't have the vision board, but I just looked at, hey, every person I meet is an opportunity to do great things in life.
Yeah, I couldn't articulate it when I was a kid, but I would create value and develop people anywhere and everywhere appropriately, responsibly, any way that I could. And it just kept exposing me to more and more opportunities. And I never kept score. A lot of people keep score even when they say they don't. It's like, there's no hidden agreements here. I'm just doing this. And then there's all these things that exposes me to that I can take advantage of, participate in, whatever I want. And that works out really well, but it's decades of that. No wonder it works out. And I've had employees, biggest company that I founded and sold, and I sold it in 2016, had a little over 500 employees. And I would do onboarding orientations. And I've had employees say, how come these things don't just happen to me? And I remember joking at one point, yeah, my 23 overnight success story. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Listen, I've always practiced since I was a kid. I made more deposits than withdrawals. And when I try, it's not everyone grasps the concept, but it comes back tenfold. But you're right. We've interviewed many people at Quest as we were growing, and they would come in with their resume, and we weren't big resume readers, to be honest with you, because listen, everyone's the number one graduate in their class, right? But I said, let's put the resume aside. Let's talk about you as a human being. And they would always come in and want to be the director of some department, and obviously starting at 150,000. And what really brought things in perspective, because they would sometimes call me into interviews and say, oh, hey, Bruce, this is so-and-so. They're applying for the director of marketing. Do you mind telling them how long did you help us for free? Oh, 9 months. Oh, did you get paid? No. And you'd almost see a little bit of the deflated ego. But when I tell people that story, they're like, well, you're an idiot. Why would you work for 9 months for free? Well, fast forward, I had equity in $1 billion company.
What I find interesting when I talk to people about what it means to be successful or prosper or whatever that is, I don't think very many have thought deeply about it at all. And they're kind of doing what they think they should do instead of maybe what they were meant to do and how to go through it. But what are you finding there in general when you start working with folks? Have they thought very deeply about, and then I want to get to the, what your answer of what prosperity really means. But if they thought very deeply about it on average when you meet with folks?
Yeah, it's interesting when Ethan and I wanted to write the book, we had, a bunch of employees. We were helping other people launch their books. We had, we were helping authors get their messages out to the world with our company. And I remember one of the guys that we were helping do it with, he's like, dude, you've helped so many other people become New York Times bestsellers. Why don't you do it yourself? And, again, he threw down the gauntlet, and Ethan and I were just like, you know what? Let's do it. And I remember, what would a topic that I would love to share with the world for the rest of my life? Because once you write a book out there and you get it out there, it's like, what would you feel good about your grandkids and your great grandkids and everybody reading? And so we really came up with what's most important with us is ensuring that we're living a life of prosperity, which means for us, after thousands of surveys and everything else, we ask everybody, what does it mean to you to be prosperous? And it was interesting. Everything that we got back, we found that prosperity, living in a zone of prosperity, was actually very multidimensional. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about happiness. It was more really multidimensional, where it was actually a really good balance between money, happiness, and sustainability. So it had to have those three elements in it to really have prosperity. Because a lot of people are like, we all know a lot of people that have a lot of money, but they are miserable and not in a good space. We all know those people that are super, super happy and excited to have amazing families in life, but they don't have enough money and they're stressed because they can't pay their medical bills or whatever that may be. So we don't feel like that's living in a state of prosperity. That's just living in a state of happiness. And the other thing was the sustainability piece, is that it had to be something that you could do for the long run and that was good for others, that you weren't taking advantage of your brother. You weren't taking advantage of your neighbor, that what you were actually doing with your life was meaningful and significant. And so that was that sustainability piece. So really a state of prosperity is like, money is so important to be able to make it, to be able to learn your economic engine. And then the second part was, do you love what you're doing and can you do it over the long run? And is it sustainable over the long period of time? So for us, too, that was kind of the three-legged stool of prosperity, was those things.
Okay. And it seems like you're helping people be more intentional in how they think about this. Whereas up until this point, maybe they wanted it but didn't know how to think about it. Is that what you're finding when you work with folks?
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. The intentionality about living a prosperous life, and really the subtitles, create the life you really want. And Arthur Brooks has written a new book called Build the Life You Want. Him and Oprah Winfrey just launched it. And it's really all of the studies around happiness, which is a lot of the studies we did, is like, how do you get to that space where you have, just really joy in your heart and you want to do things, even though the struggle's hard. It's really understanding that. But if you combine what your core competencies are with the ability to make revenue and build a company, or, consult or teach or write or, be a fly fisherman or whatever that is, like, if you really love it, you're going to do it. You're going to do it excellent. And so it's really learning how to live a state of prosperity, is living in a state of excellence across those three mediums for us.
Okay. And when I'm listening to this, it really ties into what I advocate for, which is creating value in the world. And if you're not creating value in the world, it probably doesn't feel right going through your process that you're talking about here. And of course, I had to do some of the exercises, so I wrote down, what is prosperity to me? And maybe it's a little unfair because I think deeply about this stuff all the time, but I wrote, being on a path that continually increases my internal level of fulfillment. And there's a lot that goes into that to make it happen. I've got a number of things that I cultivate, but that's how I thought about it. Does that directionally kind of fit with what you're talking about here?
Yeah. 100%. And then what is that path? What are those things? What is your, like, if you lead, like, I love you because you do a lot of strategy. Now think about that as your, strategic objective. Now, what are the 5 critical things that you need to do to fulfill that, to hit your Polaris point?
So I want to get into the Polaris point here. I did a lot of the exercises, but on that one, my Polaris point on the value side, which is where it kind of started in your book, 3 things that I really value: elevating human consciousness, starting with my own, health, and fulfillment. So I look at that, and I do this by connecting culture to holistic value creation within organizations of any type or size, communities, even at the individual level. And that feels really good because the more of that I do, selfishly, it creates a better world for guys like you and I and my family and friends to interact with going forward.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect example. And Lee, I know your work and I know what you do, and you love people. like you, I mean, what you're doing now, even with me, is like you love to serve and you love to help other people accomplish their goals. And in so doing that, it actually is fulfilling for you.
Oh, 100%. And selfishly, again, it makes the world a better place for us to interact with. So when people talk about being selfless or, anything about altruism, it never makes sense to me because we all do what's in our best self-interest for this life or the next. And so by definition, we're selfish. And if I feel good doing something, then selfishly, I want to feel good going through. Getting the six prosperity practices. So when you go through the book, these are the things after thousands of surveys and working with thousands of leaders that you landed on. The first one, which is a foundation for all of it, finding your Polaris point. So talk about why that's so important and a little bit about what goes into that for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's really interesting as you look at like, if you look at finding your Polaris point, it's really seeking clarity and on your life. Being prosperous to us means you have a life worth living. It means your internal and external worlds are congruent. It means you have deep, loving relationships, and that drives our happiness. Most of our joys and most of our sorrows will come within the walls of our own homes and with the partnerships we have. Right? So that's actually a big part of it. It means you're making the world a better place and helping others prosper as well. And that comes back to you. Lee, you and I are very similar. Like my father's told me when I was coming, down the stairs, heading to college, my first year, I just come back from a 2-year mission in the Philippines. And my father grabbed my face and he said, Randy, I want you to remember one thing that's going to help you have so much success in your life is to learn to do as much as you can, as often as you can, for as many people as you can, and expect nothing in return. And I wrote that down in my journal, and then I just tried to internalize that. And really what he was teaching me was that law of reciprocity. And so for me, my Polaris point is mankind. I love helping as many people as I can. Lee, you and I are very similar because I've kept to that mantra. It's like, how many people can I help raise up? My whole thing in life is leadership. And if I can help groups and organizations and team be better leaders, dude, that makes me so freaking extremely just pumped when I see a company that we can turn around from doing $1 million in revenue to over $100 million in less than 18 months, right? Because they all get aligned. Like that is my Polaris point. Like my Polaris point is helping other people be the best versions of themselves. That's what I found that I love. But my brother Marty, he's an engineer and he loves to build and create software and technology and apps and learning and training modules and all of that. Doesn't deal with people as much, but he deals with systems and processes. So I think finding your Polaris point is like, what were you born to do? What did God create you to do? What was your one thing that you're going to do that's going to create value for the world? And that could, again, be writing books or building a company or, building an orphanage and a charity. And it doesn't always need to be living in a state of prosperity. It just means you have enough money to do what you need to do. Doesn't mean that you're going to be uber wealthy. It's just that you're living in the state where you have all your needs met.
And I love your point around, enough money to maintain your basic lifestyle. Super important. Without that, it does become, a struggle that will make you way less happy for sure. But I find unless people are actually cultivating, trying to have a better mindset and perspective, increase fulfillment, et cetera, no matter how much they have, it doesn't matter.